I'm an addict named Shawn. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to be here and to share with you guys, and a little nervous as usual, but like he was saying, my previous work schedule kind of pulled me away from recovery. Like I was only hitting 2 meetings a week. I was working nights, and I was just dead tired, constantly dead tired, and I just didn't want to do anything. So like it affected my recovery negatively. And like I've been at this new position now where I got my evenings back, and like since I've been in this position for 15 days, like I've been to 15 meetings, right? So like I've gotten back to that schedule of hitting a meeting a night. I'm probably going to go to another meeting after this, but like that's what this program is about. Like lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise. And like that's my favorite line in the basic text. And like yes, I've gotten the opportunity to grow through staying clean and working with my sponsor and putting some step work in my life. Like I've learned that I can gain these things, and when someone gets up and shares, they're supposed to be sharing some hope, right? And like sometimes I'll second guess myself, and my disease will hit me and say like, well, what hope do you have to deliver? I mean, I can tell you like the hope shot for me is the fact that like after having 2 years clean, I relapsed the day after having 2 years clean, stayed out for 6 years, came back, and I'm celebrating 2 years clean this Friday. And like that, I gotta get there first. But that right there is the hope shot for me, right? Like I know I can go home like and just be proud of myself and look at myself in the mirror and not hate myself, because like when I was on that 6-year run, there was literally a 6-month period of time where like I wouldn't go into my bathroom, right? Because I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. And like I wouldn't go shower, I wouldn't go shave, I wouldn't do anything because I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror, right? Like I've never been homeless, but I've brought that homeless feeling and homeless vibe into my house, right? Like, my friend always says like, I never lived under a bridge, but I brought the bridge into my house, and like, and that's what it was. And like I had to hit a bottom, and I hit a bottom, and you know what, like thankfully that bottom brought me back to NA, and like the one thing about me is like I love Narcotics Anonymous. There's a couple guys in this room that have known me 10, 11 years now, and they watch me struggle and they watch me come back. And like there was also a lot of people when I would try and come back and get a white key tag, oh well, what's going to be different this time, Shawn? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do differently? Every time I would have some really, really slick answer for them. And like this time when I came back, a couple people came up to me with like an attitude like, oh, what's going to be different this time? And I said, I don't know. I'm just done. Like I don't give a fuck what you think. Like I'm done. Like I'm here for me. Like I don't let anyone's judgment push me out of a meeting or push me out of the room. I don't care. I really just don't care what people think. As far as me being in the room with Narcotics Anonymous, if somebody wants to have an opinion of me, that's good. That's for them. Like I'm here to save my life. Like, and I realize that now. And it took me 10 years to figure that out. It took me 10 years to figure out that like I belong in Narcotics Anonymous, right? And like that kind of goes into the steps. But like I have to talk about my relapse when I talk about steps 1, 2, and 3, because like I stopped practicing them, right? I stopped practicing 1, 2, and 3 when I relapsed. Like I forgot that I was powerless over my addiction, so I let my addiction take the power. I forgot that I had a higher power, and I gave the higher power. I gave the drugs that higher power back over me, and then I took my will back, and I was living how I wanted to, and I used. And the thing is like, when I relapsed, and I talk about sponsorship, like when I relapsed, the main thing for me was I stopped talking to my sponsor, right? Like my relapse started 6 months before I picked up, right? It started 6 months before I picked up, and I remember something happened in my life, and it was a little hectic, and I said, you know what, like, and none of my friends in NA wanted to help me because they were like, yo, we're telling you, get out of that situation, just get out, run now. And I was like, no, I'm holding on, and like right then and there I took my will, and I was holding on, and I gave another person the power over me, and like I was holding on, I'm trying to save this person, and then 6 months later I happened to be walking down Las Olas in Fort Lauderdale, and those the bar girls that are holding out those test tube shots, the shots that are in the test tube, she walked right up to me, and with 2 years and 1 day clean, I took one, right, and that was it. Right, and all because I stopped practicing my steps in my life, But I'm going to talk about my sponsor a little bit, and there's some people in this room that know my sponsor, and you know what, like, the the relationship that I have with my sponsor, in our literature it says our sponsor is a guide through the 12 steps, right? And that's a sponsor's ultimate purpose is our guide through the 12 steps. But I also have a bond and a trust with my sponsor, right? Like, I love my sponsor. I know I can tell him anything, and it stays between me and him, And, like, minus the other shit, like, we go fishing together, and we, him and his wife come over to my house for dinner, and I go over to their house for dinner, and, we do all these things, and, like, we have this amazing bond and this amazing friendship. And the crazy thing is, right, like, he is a Vietnam vet who's only shot heroin. Like, and I'm a crackhead from Miami, right? And like, so we're two completely opposite. Like, he's a biker, from the hood, like, you know what I mean? And so, but the thing is like, we mesh, and like, he has what I want. Like, and when I sit here and I talk about a sponsor having what you want, like, I know when I selected my sponsor, and like, he's been my sponsor since way back when I had my first run in recovery, and when I came back this time, I had another sponsor. And I got to a point in my recovery with that in my step work with that sponsor, and I just didn't trust him to go over my 4-step with him. I did not trust him. Love him to death. He's a great guy, and I just didn't trust him to do a 5th step with him. So, I talked to my current sponsor. I told him what was going on, and he says, "That's fine, but you have to go tell him that you aren't comfortable in the sponsor relationship." And part ways with him. He's like, I'm not going to let you just stop calling him. He's like, that's addict behavior to just avoid somebody, and like, so that was my first assignment, was to break up with him. And like, now, like, with my sponsor I have now, like yeah, I'm slacking on my step work a little bit, but like I said, I could have put in a lot more effort in, but I was letting my work schedule be an excuse, and like, today I don't have to, like, I have no excuse left. Right, like, I have to put in some step work, like, that's what my sponsor told me. He's like, tomorrow, I haven't touched my step work in a month and a half, and tomorrow I'm going over my step with him, just because he was like, that's it, you have no more excuses, we're working steps now, it's time to get real, you're coming up on 2 years, like, you got to start doing something, and so that's, Alan's laughing because he knows my sponsor, and like that's the thing, and like, it goes back, I talk about, the first step, right? We admitted that we were powerless. Like, that right there, like, I didn't even realize that until this time around. Like, I didn't realize that I was actually powerless. Like, my first time in recovery, I didn't get it. But, like, this time, I was so beaten and I was so broken that I realized that I had no control over what was going on in my life. My life had become completely unmanageable, right? Like, my bottom was, was 7 days awake, smoking crack and flocka in a hotel room in Hialeah. And I purposely overdosed and accidentally lit the hotel room on fire. Like, who does that shit? You know what I mean? Like, and like, that's my story, and that's my bottom, and like, that was the last day I used. That was November 7th, 2017. Like, that was the last day I used. Because I remember waking up after being revived. Like, I was revived in the parking lot of the hotel, got to the hospital, and they put, they intubated me, and I remember waking up and pulling the tube out, looking around. 2 cops pulled tasers on me. I was handcuffed to the bed, and I looked around, saw my mom and my sister crying, and I was like, you know what? Like, I honestly, like, I just looked up, and I was like, thank God I'm done. Like, someone has finally saved me from myself. Like, being strapped to that bed was the greatest feeling that I've ever had in my life, because I knew I didn't have to do anything anymore. Like, I knew somehow, some way, I was going to be all right. And, it's funny because one of the cops that was spending, because they had to guard me every night before they handed me over to the Department of Corrections, and one of the cops, he was just talking to me about 12-step programs, and he was just like, yeah, you really do good. And then I told him my story, and he's like, man, you just got to get back into it, you're gonna be all right. And like, right then and there, that just proves to me, like, that I have a higher power. The fucking arresting officer, was talking to me about 12 steps. So, like, that's something that I have to look at. But, my life was completely unmanageable. And my life is still unmanageable today. You know what I mean? Like, I can handle it now, and I don't use it because of it. But, like, there's a lot of things in my life where like, my temper will get me, especially when I'm driving. But, yeah. but it is what it is. Like, it's progress, not perfection. I hate that cliche, but like, you know what it is. Like, I just get a chance to work on myself on a daily basis. A day at a time. That's it. Like just for today, I cannot act out on my, I cannot act out and then let my disease take over. And I remember when I first came around, speaking on the second step a little bit, like, I'm not a religious person at all. Like, I'm not. Like, when I was 11 years old, one of my close friends got shot and killed over a beeper case and a t-shirt, right? And I remember I was at his funeral. I said, man, why did this happen to him? And someone said it was all part of God's plan. And from that moment on, I had a resentment against God, right? I had a resentment against religion. I had a resentment against, so like that wasn't my thing. And I had a major problem with that. And I think I can really say that like my second step that I ever did was BS. Like I was one of those people like, well, you can make it a doorknob and you'll be fine. You know what I mean? But like, you can't make your higher power a doorknob. It just doesn't work. But this time, I found a power greater than myself when I came back to Narcotics Anonymous, right? Like, I was loved and I was welcomed, like by even people in this room. I was loved and welcomed. Of course, there was, the ones that were just, they'd see me come back, pick a white key tag, because in that span of 6 years, I picked up 36 white key tags in 6 years. You know what I mean? So people saw me come in and out. People saw me in meetings high. People saw me, getting high in the bathroom of the clubhouses. And right, so like they formed this opinion of me, and that's all good because like I was that guy, right? And I'm still capable of being that guy. But like the fact of the matter is like I was loved back into this room. Right? And I know in the green and gold, it talks about we greet each other with the same empathy reserved for survivors of the near fatal catastrophe, the same near fatal catastrophe, right? And like we survived, you know what I mean? And like I survived, and like people have welcomed me back and loved me, and like that's where I find my higher power. Like my whole this last second step that I did, the whole thing was based on the unconditional love of Narcotics Anonymous. It wasn't the people, it wasn't the literature, wasn't that? It was just the whole, like the unconditional love that we get from some people and some we don't, and that's okay. You just have to pick who you keep around you, and like that's it. Like I have a very small circle, but like my circle is strong, and I'm not one of those guys. I used to be the guy who used to know everybody, run around hugging everybody. Now you see me in a meeting, I stay quiet, I hug a few people, and I just keep it moving, because like I know the people I have in my life, if I show up and like, hey, I need you, got you, and the same goes for them. Like I have friends that like I literally don't talk to for months on end, and then they'll hit me up on Facebook or shoot me a text or post some Facebook status, and I'll text them right away, hey, what's going on, you all right? But like I don't talk to them for months, and like we get that's our relationship, and like that's okay, because like I'm just weird about constantly being in contact with people. Like my sponsor yells at me because I don't call him as much as I should. But my whole thing is like I don't like calling people, so what I did was I adjusted my meeting schedule so I see my sponsor at least 3 nights a week. Like I've adjusted my life lately since I've gotten this opportunity to change my basically everything in my life has changed right now in the past 2 weeks. And I've gotten this opportunity to mold my recovery, And the cool thing is like, before my recovery was revolving around my life, now my life is revolving around my recovery, Like my recovery has become first again, which to me was like an amazing thing. And I'll just talk about the third step, and then, I'll be done, because I don't like taking up too much time with me. But like for me, and like this is all just for me, like everybody has their own way of working the steps. They have their own interpretation of the steps, and like the most important thing is like you work them. Like that's it. Like the changes in the steps. For me, like I lived in, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but like I lived in self-will when I was using, right? Like everything I did was for my benefit. And if it didn't go my way, I would force it to go my way. Like I would force that square peg into a round hole. I didn't care if I had to use 3 hammers, like I would get that thing in there. And, and I can look back at so many examples and so many times in my life that like, I took my will back. But like every time I got high, knowing that I didn't want to, I mean, I don't know, like it just for me, you know, when I finally gave up, you know, on this last third step, like when I finally gave up my will over to my higher power, like it was a great feeling. And you know, and the way that I work my third step on a daily basis is just like, you know, my sponsor, he'll always, like, if I start like bitching at him, he'll be like, let me see your hands, turn it over, you know, and he just flips my hands over. And you know, that's something that like I've learned, you know, like when things just happen, I just lately I've just been like kind of like, okay, you know, I work with people that like curse me out on a constant basis. Like I get yelled at, I get cursed at, you know, and like if I was living in my will, I'd smack the hell out of somebody, you know, but then I lose my job and, you know, it starts a whole thing. But like, trust me, I want to, but now I just kind of look at them, just like, whatever. You know, I'll take it out on someone on Facebook or something, you know. But like that's just what it is for me, you know. And like steps 1, 2, and 3 are very important to me. And like I said, like I personally believe that my relapse started when I stopped working steps 1, 2, and 3. Like I personally believe that for you know, for myself and my personal recovery. Like, that's why like I remain vigilant on those 3 steps especially. But you know, I don't have a favorite step. All the steps are my favorite, but like I really like, you know, I like 1, 2, and 3. You know, they're the power steps that open your mind up and get you ready for step 4. But you know, like with that, like if you're new here, like if you're in your first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, or you know, or you're just coming back, or you're just in so much pain and you can't believe that you actually made it to a meeting, like congratulations, you saved my life tonight, because you just gave me hope that like we never have to use again, even if we want to. Thank you for letting me share.